Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me today in the Locker Room. I'm Alan Locher. Emmy Award-winning costume designers Maggie Delgado and Shawn Reeves both got their early start working on and off Broadway before bringing their incredible talents to Bay City, Oakdale, Pine Valley, Port Charles, and Springfield. This talented duo has worked in the daytime television industry since the 1990s, dressing some of the most iconic soap characters to ever hit daytime television, including the one and only Reva Shane, Felicia Gallant, Erica Kane, Carly Corinthos, Kim Hughes, Carly Tenney, Rachel Corey, to name a few. And don't forget all of the men that go along with those women. Maggie has worked as a costume designer on Another World, All My Children, and As the World Turns. And Shawn worked on Another World, Guiding Light, and he is currently the costume designer on ABC's Port Charles. I'm so excited to welcome them both to the Locker Room. Please welcome Emmy Award winners Maggie Delgado and Shawn Reeves. Hello, hello, hello.
Hi.
Before we go any further, I had a phone call earlier today, and Linda Dano sends her love to both of you.
Oh, Linda.
We love Linda.
Yes, and she loves both of you.
Linda who? I don't know who that is.
So I found it so fascinating that both of you got your start on and off Broadway. Talk about your early sort of childhood. Was art always something in your life? Maggie, if you want to go first.
Yeah, definitely. It was a big deal for my mother. She had friends who were painters. There's one of them paintings right behind me. Yeah, I was always exposed to it, and I loved it, and I was good at it. In third grade, I did a painting, and the teacher said, "Oh, this is really good." And I won some prize. And from then on, art was always part of my trajectory into life, I guess.
And it's nice. I mean, to get recognition in third grade is helpful for a child. I mean, to keep it going forward. Shawn, for you?
I also was raised in a very artistic family. From my great-grandmother. I was raised in New Mexico, and my great-grandmother was based around Santa Fe, so we were always exposed to the art. But my mother, who is amazing, always encouraged us to try new crafts, new art, and we were always doing something. And then that just sort of progressed, the creativity and the sort of the growth of the creative mind just kept progressing through school and high school, and I loved expressing myself through my clothes at an early age, and that progressed through high school to the point where I look back in my yearbook in high school and some of the outfits I wore, and it's like, what was I thinking? But
those pictures on Facebook, Shawn. I look like in high school.
Yeah. So I was always very, very encouraged. And we grew up way out in the farm country. So having activities all the time really, I gotta make sure it's my phone. I'm in my office at work, so that wasn't for me. So please bear with me. So yes, I had an incredible creative background with my family, being very supportive.
Well, and New Mexico is very artsy to begin with, right?
Correct. It is.
We actually have greetings from New Mexico. Melanie says greetings from New Mexico.
Melanie.
And Lynn Wilson says, so excited for this chat and to hear from two of my all-time favorite coworkers.
Yay, Lynn.
and Nicole Forrester says, so good to see your face, Shawn.
Nicole Forrester.
So when you were, high school and looking at colleges and deciding, was art, going to be the major from that point, or?
It was for me.
Oh, and you definitely.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Maggie.
No,
and you went to Rollins in Florida, correct?
I did. I went to Rollins College. Yes, and I was an fine arts major, and then combined art and theater because it really sort of seemed to fit really well, and that's sort of how design evolved, which was great. That was Shawn?
And you, Shawn?
I definitely was, because the New Mexico State University, where I went to school, was in the same town I grew up in, and our theater program, we was run. The head of our department was Mark Medoff, the playwright who wrote Children of a Lesser God.
What?
So
Oh, wow.
our little Southwestern university had a fairly notable theater program. So kind of growing up, I grew up with Mark's children. My high school was kind of a feeder school to the theater department. So we just grew up with that. So it was just natural for a lot of us to go from theater programs in high school, which I did, right into the theater program at New Mexico State. So that's where I went to school. I did not finish school. I dropped out and moved to New York. So I don't have a degree.
You have a degree.
I have a degree in life.
Yeah, it's a different degree. But it's interesting because you worked a lot, and Maggie was telling me, in the theater department. What do you think? That early entrance into the theater department helped with you both arriving in the Big Apple. Like, what do you think you learned in those experiences?
Oh, well, I'll just jump right in. A work ethic. I worked with incredible costume designers and teachers and women who ran the costume shops, and they taught us just this amazing work ethic and approach to excellence within our boundaries and pushing ourselves. So it was really these people who I'm still very close to this day, that instilled this love of the art. But then also, at that age, when those lights go up on that stage, you're just drawn in. There's just no way around it. So.
And Maggie?
It's true magic. Yes, my department, again, a work ethic, and we pretty much, it was a very strong department, the theater department. And we did everything. You did everything. You started, flats and lighting sets and stage managing and being in the chorus or having the lead or directing or designing. And by the time you were a senior, pretty much I was designing the big shows on stage. We had 6 major productions and 12 student-directed productions.
Wow.
Every year.
Wow.
It was amazing. So once we hit the ground in New York, and I say we because there was a real community for my school that moved on to New York, we could get a job doing anything. It was really amazing.
Yeah.
We just knocked on doors, and whoever wanted to hire us, we can do that. So.
And did you know at that time, working with your college theater departments, that costume was the top priority for both of you?
It was for me by senior year. I had done sets, I had acted, we'd done everything there, but by senior year, I knew that I pretty much was that was gonna be what I wanted to do and pursue when I got to New York.
And Shawn, for you left school to go to New York. What did you head there for?
I actually was going to attend FIT and study fashion design. That's sort of where I was. This was the late 80s, and fashion was amazing. And
around the corner from Guiding Light.
Yeah.
Guiding
at
Light
that time, yeah.
Yes, in the 80s, Guiding Light was attached to FIT, basically.
Yeah.
And when you were there, probably, Shawn, I was doing freelance work in a lot of the museum exhibitions at FIT. Mm-hmm. So that's how I made money, because if you're doing off Broadway and off Broadway, you made no money. But so you had to rent. And every time there was an exhibit at that time at FIT, I would get hired to do anything. Mostly, dress the mannequins or work with the designer, whatever put together their fashion shows. So that was sort of my money work. So fashion also played into my world very much at that time.
How do you know? How do you get into working for those exhibits? Is there something you're signing up for? Like, for somebody watching, if they want to come to New York and.
It was friends from my theater department who had gotten jobs there because we all could work in a shop. And basically at a museum, you've got to build the sets to do the exhibits. And they were working there and they'd say, oh, Maggie Delgado, she can do makeup on the mannequins. She can help with the hair. She can work with the designers. And I met great designers like Shawn Reeves at the time, my heart was still, it was such an exposure to fashion, which then I'm jumping ahead, but Alan, then the combination of my theater and fashion, as I'm sure for you also, Shawn, was perfect for soap operas. Really.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, for soap operas, definitely. But yeah, Maggie had more contacts coming into New York. I didn't really know anybody except for a few. And what you asked earlier, it really does come down to your contacts coming up the ranks from school to the various work that you've done. I luckily had done summer stock in New Hampshire right before moving to New York. And so when FIT fell through, I was able to reach out to contacts from people in the theater in New Hampshire who are also New Yorkers, and was able to start making those contacts to start getting those initial jobs where then you start to network even more. So, yeah, you just have to do a really good job, and people will remember you. And you just work your way up the ladder.
Don't burn bridges.
Never.
Yeah.
Never.
You know who's going to be the PA, who's going to then be your executive producer, right?
Exactly.
Well, and it happens, yeah.
So true. So true.
Before we jump to daytime, arriving in New York or in college, Maggie, you just mentioned Givenchy. Were there designers early in your life that you just always followed them before, being a designer yourself, a costume designer for a show?
I think that Oscar de la Renta was somebody that I was, and Carolina Herrera, they were both Latinos. And for me to see Latinos
representation
was a big deal. Givenchy I like because I always loved Audrey Hepburn movies. So I always liked that. But then I was also, at that time, Donna Karan was just starting.
Oh, yeah.
And Harry Ellis. It was like a plethora, like you were saying, Shawn, the 80s design, New York. Wow.
Armani, all of those were just starting out.
Yeah, all of that was happening, and it was amazing. It was. I want to go back just one more thing.
Yeah.
When I got to New York and I wanted to do theater, that was my background. I immediately realized, talking back to connections, that my problem with the theater world to really get the good jobs was that I didn't go to Yale drama school.
Yeah.
Everyone that was getting the job I wanted had gone to Yale drama school.
Yeah, Yale.
I think today there are many really good programs, graduate programs, that are available to so many design students. But I think getting that really solid background, then you're going to be working with the directors who are going to come into New York and do the great projects, right? I mean, that's how it's who you know, and you're going to be working with these great people that are then going to.
Oh, absolutely. All my peers in the early days either came from Rutgers, Yale, Brandeis, or Harvard. And I didn't have those credentials like they did, but they came in, as Maggie said, having worked with directors who are professors at their universities or designers who've come into the university system through theirs, and they bring them into New York, and that's where you first start assisting. It took me a long time. I never really did the big assisting work because I just didn't have those contacts. So I was really scrambling. Luckily, I had the job at Juilliard, my first job at the Juilliard School, to sort of pay my bills. But then I was really scrambling for any little job, any little off Broadway job, whatever anybody wanted, I was willing to do it.
Your hand went up.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I was like, I'll be there. So I did a lot of weird things. I mean, I sewed for Lady Bunny in the early years, and I never got paid. Drag queens never paid back then. They just didn't.
That is
so
funny. And you said you worked with Charles
money.
Bush.
I worked with Charles. I worked with Charles Bush, and that whole sort of underground community. I almost worked on the original Hedwig and the Angry Inch, but I was doing something else at the time, so I wasn't able to work on that. But yeah, anything. I was there for it, and I had a sewing machine on the floor in my bedroom, and I sewed on the floor, and so
dying in my kitchen. I remember just pots of dye.
Yeah.
One of my favorite jobs that my husband often reminds me, and our friends when we all get together talk about, when we had all been doing theater, came to New York, and BCBG, remember BCBG?
Oh yeah.
Had to be painted black. So we all went in there and painted the walls. Back then, it was a way to make some money because we all,
And Maggie, did you tell me on the phone your mom was a big sewer too, right?
My mom, yes. My mom, I'm a Cuban refugee, and in Cuba, she loved to sew. That was her hobby. And when we came to this country, she made a living sewing for a fancy ladies shop. And my entire life, I was around clothes because and sewing machine. So when I got pretty much, I think it was middle school, because there are some pictures of my like 9th grade of dresses that I would design and she would make. So throughout my, my mother and I were always going to the fabric store, buying some fabric, copying something from Vogue magazine, making it for me. And I would just change things around. And so, yes, sewing was a big part. Definitely. Her influence was big.
Do you sew, Shawn? I don't know if that is a prerequisite.
Oh, yeah. My mother started me sewing, probably was a preteen, maybe 12 years old.
Oh.
And she started me on Barbie clothes. So she would buy Barbie patterns, and I would use her scraps because she was a big sewer. Is a big sewer. And so I would make Barbie clothes for my sister, and I would also sell them to the neighborhood girls. And so I would sell Barbie clothes and made enough money to buy a go-kart one year. That was very exciting.
But then your life came full circle, because then you were designing costumes for the Macy's.
For big Barbie. Oh, yeah. Oh, right. The Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. I was sewing Barbie clothes for the adult-sized Barbies. But I
love that.
I have to mention one of my most favorite teachers of all time, Mrs. Melton. She was my sewing teacher in high school. As a blow-off class in high school, I thought, I'll just take sewing because I know how to sew. And she was the first one to really sort of helped finesse my technique, because I was kind of this wild sewer. And I made my prom suit that year for sewing.
Wow.
So I started tailoring in high school. And then again, in New York, I could work in the sweatshops. I worked in several of the big costume shops. Some are still there, some aren't. But yes, I'm a very good sewer.
You're a much better sewer. I'm still that crazy sewer. I am not. I'm always battling with the sewing machine. Actually, my mom's sewing machine here in the apartment, I had it fixed, and I still can't figure out what I'm doing wrong.
Oh no, that's terrible.
I started sewing while I was here, I guess, kind of in her memory. But I'm not very good at sewing. But
I shouldn't, but here, go. I'm talking over Maggie.
In costume shops, another money job, And that's how I met designers who then hired me as their assistant. So it all kind of comes around. Like you said, if you're prepared to do anything, you never know what door is going to open for you. And that's how I met some of the designers.
Yeah.
So petticoats at Michael John. You know, I worked with Brooks and Eves, and back then.
Oh, Eves Brooks. Ooh.
So let's talk about your road to you're both. Do I have it right? Both Bay City is your first stop in
Bay
daytime?
City was my first stop. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Maggie,
it was also our family soap. So I grew up watching it, and I grew up watching Maggie's designs and Maggie's clothes on Another World, and just to toot her horn a little bit, she was one of my inspirations because I would always look. I remember the Snowflake Ball and some of these other big shows that she did, and Felicia Gallant, our dear Linda Dano. So, and I always remembered, and as a matter of fact, I almost sent her one of my things when I was in college.
Yeah.
No, I'm so glad I didn't. I was so embarrassed. It was something I made. I'm like, I'm going to send it to Another World, and she's going to use it on this character. But I never did. So,
well, you had said, Alan, at the beginning that we were doing soaps in the 90s. I started in the 80s.
I wasn't sure. Yeah, so you were in the 80s. So Bay City,
knew that.
Sorry, you started Bay City in the 80s. I thought I might have had that wrong.
1985.
Wow.
See, I knew that because I'm a fan of Maggie's, so I knew that.
So you really entered daytime when there was still a lot of money for clothing.
Well, and clothing was so big and exuberant when she came in.
Amazing. It was amazing. Everything was open to us, because I think also the designers at that time, meaning the fashion designers, realized, oh, this is a way for us to advertise now it's become a totally different thing, but product placement, you know. So anyone would open the doors to us. We could go to any house and they would lend us things for things like the Snowflake Ball.
Yeah.
We had amazing remotes all over the world. It was incredible, the places that we went to.
Well, Maggie and the other daytime costume designers at the time, they really made the careers and the businesses like Badgley Mishka and Arnold Skazi. They really
were great.
By using their stuff on daytime, they lifted those designers up. So
yeah, my daughter was married 2 years ago, and Monique Lullier, she had a Monique Lullier wedding gown. And I met Monique when she would bring her bag of dresses when she started the evening gown. And then I'd go through them and say, Monique, how about this, and look at her now. I mean, that was very early on. She was very accessible and very willing to try anything, you know, and lend her stuff. And so, yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, we used to do a lot of shit. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, and I remember being able to call up showrooms and say, hey, I need to come in and, you know, borrow some stuff. And by the late 90s when I started, mid to late 90s when I started, we didn't have quite the entry into the showrooms that we did earlier.
And you didn't have probably as large a budget as they did in the 80s.
Not really. I worked with what they gave me. You know, and going back to our theater background, that was one of the benefits for me, was they could give me $5 and I was going to make it look like $500, you know, because we learn this illusion in theater, and you can make things look amazing for nothing. And I was able to really make that happen with whatever they gave me at the time. So, but unfortunately, when I started through the late 90s, early 2000s, the red carpets and all of that promotional stuff started to really take off. So the designers just couldn't lend and help everybody. So they started to really sort of narrow their focus down. But I could still
Right.
I could still call up Van Cleef and Arpels and say, hey, I need some diamond jewelry for a wedding. And they would be like, come on over. And I would go pick diamonds and put them in my bag and take a cab back to the studio.
What's the
one of our fans had just said, Benjamin had just said, and then they would announce the designers or the jewels in the credits. And I totally, in my memory of growing up watching, I hear that.
Yeah.
Clothes, I can't remember, like the 80s on Guiding Light.
Oh,
it was
yeah,
like
clothes by Pierre
by
Cardin, or
Yes.
Well, we always made sure to give them a credit at the end. So
what's it like now, Shawn?
What's it like now?
In terms of anything like that, does that even exist anymore?
No.
Yeah.
Nowadays, if you wanted to borrow stuff, you have to. Now we're getting into a whole nother subject, but to make it as quickly as possible, you have to show your online presence, your followers on social media. You have to submit a whole packet to let them know what stature or who you are. So I don't do it anymore. I just I don't have.
It would take too long. It would take too long.
It takes too long, and I need so much merchandise, and it's just not worth it anymore. Plus, out here in LA, it's a very different sort of setup than it was in New York. So, so no, I don't do it.
So talk about the process, for fans watching, how does it begin to, you take one episode and, how do you go about your day? You get a breakdown, or you learn about the snowflake ball or the, Lumina or whatever it is.
Oh, geez, Lumina. I'm gonna let Maggie start with that one.
Well, for me, it's all in the writing, and it all comes from the words. So you would get the breakdown, and I'm assuming you still do, Shawn, that the breakdowns are sent to you before the script is written.
Yes.
And from there, you start working on how you are going to attack the problem of the day, as I would call it. But at the same time, you're developing your character. So you have a certain number of actors that work all the time, and hopefully by that point they're developed as characters. But then you have the new group that comes in all the time, whether it's the day player or the character that's coming in to be the killer for that month or whatever. So you're working with two things. It all comes from the writing, though. It's all written on a page, and you create the character and you work with the story, if that makes any sense. So these two things come together and evolve into what we do every day in 25 minutes because it's so much production with so little time that that's the hard part.
So, it's interesting because I'm thinking about like writing, and we'll take the character Felicia Gallant. There's her backstory. There's her 25 years before you arrived, Maggie, and then years before Shawn arrives. I know that on paper there's her character, description, her backstory. When you come, you two came in and you both replaced different people. How do you go about then sort of making Felicia yours or continuing Felicia to be Felicia? You know what I'm saying? Like, because it's interesting.
Very much so, yeah.
Well, that's a challenge because Felicia Gallant was iconic.
Yeah.
So you can't make huge changes to her. So you do need to stay within the spirit of who Felicia is. And that does include what she looked like and what the previous designers did before. And I don't go into a situation like that with the ego saying, I'm going to make Felicia completely my own. I want to honor what came before me, but then start to put my own sort of ideas on it. And that's just naturally going to happen because I'm the one in the stores or at the designers or having things made. and it's my point of view, my design aesthetic that is going into the Felicia look. So it will evolve to sort of represent my work as well, but it's still Felicia. So,
And
but
would you
again,
go through her rack, when you arrive, like for something like that? You're looking at what's already in her wardrobe
sure.
and building or watching some of, the show to see what she's, is it a combination of all those things? Or
it's a
I know there's not a
combination.
lot of time in daytime, so it's
No.
it's a curious thing to, here you are, come in and, to know, a cast of 30, let's say, is daunting to me to think about that,
It's daunting. I can only speak for myself because I did follow in Maggie's footsteps, even though there were a couple designers between us. Her presence and her aesthetic was still very strong on the show because Maggie is such a good designer. I don't want to go crazy with the compliments, but she's amazing, and she really did give that show a look. All the soaps have a unique look to them, to each show, and Another World had a very sophisticated, beautiful look. So when I came into it, again, I watched it, so I was already a fan. So I knew Rachel Corrie, I knew Jake McKinnon, I knew Paulina, I knew Felicia, of course. When I got Felicia, though, her storyline, because she's like any other person, as Maggie was saying earlier, we're here to be part of the storytelling process. I am part of the storytelling process by working with the script, just like the actors work with the script. We're all part of this storytelling process. So when I got Felicia, her life had made a lot of twists and turns, and she had been an alcoholic and this and that. And so when I got her, she was running a coffee shop, bookstore, coffee shop. So that Felicia had a specific look for that world she was in at that time. And at a certain point, Procter and Gamble came to me and said, we need to, the fans need to see Felicia as Felicia. What are we going to do to get Felicia back to the glamorous Felicia that Maggie knew, or, that we knew in the past? So long story, I basically said to them, you need to write Felicia as a certain Felicia Gallant, because you're not going to get glamorous from a coffee shop bookstore. She's not going to wear a boa in the coffee shop. So if you want, I mean, she could, because she's Felicia Gallant, and Linda Dano will do anything you ask her to. So,
and make it work.
And make it work, and make it work better than you ever imagined. So, but the idea was to get her out of the tweeds, get her out of this and that. And so they did. They started to rewrite her into more of the romance novelist character that she was. And really the essence of Felicia came back, and we were able to justify how we approached her, the change in her clothes at that point. We couldn't go back to what Maggie did, because that would have been, that's dated at that time, and we had to honor the designers of the time. So that was sort of the progression of Felicia Gallant.
Linda was, and still is, an amazing. I've never put clothes on anyone like I've been able to put clothes on Linda, to make it into something. We worked with Liberace. I mean, how glamorous can you get? But when things got bad, and I wasn't feeling great about, she'd come in and say, Maggie, where are my boas? I need a boa for this scene. So at that point, when I was working with her, I'd say, Linda, we cannot do the boa at the funeral.
Oh, but you can.
The boa just made all the difference. She could wear it to the funeral if she wanted to, because she could make it work.
Yeah.
Which was amazing.
But it's so interesting that their passion to that part of their character as well. And I know, I'm sure they were, knocked down, dragged out with many people because of things that they've had to, You know, whether it's
Mhm.
a dress, a bathing suit,
Connie
anything.
Ford.
But
I don't know if any of you remember Connie Ford
Oh yeah,
from Another World.
Ada.
Ada. Ada had a kitchen rag always over her shoulder.
Yeah, she did.
She would go crazy if she didn't have this happening at
no,
some point.
it's like her safety blanket.
It was amazing. She always,
Yeah.
it was
A lot
great.
of them have their little quirks that they really hold on to. I mean, even on for this one on General Hospital, Maurice Bernard is a very specific character, and he really holds on to the look of that character. And sometimes we sway off of his suits and the Sonny Corinthos look, and then he'll come to me at a certain point, and he's like, "I need my suits again. I need to feel Sonny again." So. And on
Well, that
Guiding
makes sense
Light,
to like a Linda or a Maurice, somebody who is so entrenched in those characters. It's got to make them feel and help them bring that character
well, on
to life.
Guiding Light, Kim Zimmer had her red, that
Red.
Riva red. That was her color, and there were times
Somebody just commented the red dress.
yeah, the red dress, and there were a couple
Somebody
times I made the mistake of using red on another character, and boy, did I hear about it. Ooh, I got an earful. That's Riva red, and it's Riva's. And you know what? You have to respect that and just say, okay, that's your red. So you make those adjustments.
And it's so funny too, because it didn't come from Kim. I mean, yes, that conversation did, but that the designer, whoever put her in that red initially, created that Riva red.
Yeah.
So it's such a process, because it for some of a Maurice, a Linda, a Kim, they've been with these shows through numerous designers, and it's sort of what we say, what daytime fans say about the change in writers, because they may take a character down a different path,
Right.
which I'm sure they must, I'm sure fans were saying the same thing, Shawn, about Riva Red, when they saw a different, because fans feel that connection to the clothes, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we hear it from the fans, and we did back in the day. And when the internet first started out, I was on Another World, and we would read the comments on the very rudimentary discussion fan groups back then, and they notice everything, and they will tell you if you've recycled a robe from somebody else, and how dare you, that was so and so. They notice all of those changes, and if you take a character too far from what they like, they will tell you. Maeve Kincaid's character on Guiding Light, Vanessa, thank you. I sort of geared her back to what Vanessa, that the fans really loved about Vanessa, and I heard about it. I would get people saying, "Thank you for bringing." What did they call her? What's her nickname? Contessa or
Contessa?
Yeah, they would say, you've brought our Vanessa back to us, or they'll say, "What did you do to our favorite character? You really messed up on that."
I think our fans, or the fans, were, for me, my eyes and ears. They, more even than the network, brought to me an understanding of certain things about specific characters that were sacred. So you knew that you didn't cross that line. And sometimes you'd argue with the actor, no, you have to do this. And they said, but you don't understand. And then once I really began to do this work, I thought, now I understand. And really, the fans, they're the ones who make it happen. So many times we would have a new character. And I want to go back to Alice Barrett and
Oh yeah,
The World. And Alice came in, and Donna Sujeski was the head writer at the time, and she had a vision for this character. And it was kind of tough for me to get her at the beginning. But at one point, it was, let's And I don't know where that came from. Donna, me, I saw something. I thought, let's give her one earring, different from the other. And all of a sudden, the audience loved it. The fans were, what a great idea. Not only that, but that also in turn made the writers create this character after seeing what we were doing with her physically. Then they went in. It was really an evolution that was because of one little thing, engaged the fans, and then the writers went off with it. It was really that.
I love that description, and I love the intermingling of the departments, that it, writing with costume and it all bringing the character to life. When does it warrant the two of you putting your pen to paper and designing an outfit?
Well, I'll go, Shawn, if that's okay.
Go ahead, Maggie.
Something like,
no, go ahead.
I'm more rested. I'm not working today.
Yeah. I ran in here from pulling the show for tomorrow. I'm like, I gotta go.
Well, we work so fast, and everything has to be done yesterday. It was just like you're always trying to keep up. That actually designing something is hard. One, because most of the things that we do are modern day, and it's accessible to us. But two, also, it's time. But once in a while, we knew that something's coming. The big wedding, the big special show, something really, and then that's our time to be able to sit down and say, wow, we can really create something. So between pulling the show the next day, reading the scripts, reading the breakdown, dressing the actors, right? Take it from there, Shawn. You know what it's like. You're doing it.
Oh, yeah.
And then you start trying to figure out how do we create this? Let's sketch something. Let's send it to a shop. Let's get somebody to buy the fabric. Shawn, take it away.
Well, Shawn, before you do, because also you're in a faster paced environment today than you were at Guiding Light and Another World. Like General Hospital is moving at a fast. Do you even have time to still design?
Yeah, I do. They are very good here about giving me sort of notice when something's coming up. So they will give me a heads up that the nurse's ball's coming, or we're getting ready to do this special episode or whatever. And we're usually pretty far ahead with breakdowns that I can get a kind of an idea of what's coming up. There are times where I don't get that much time, and I'm doing something in a week or barely 2 weeks. We did the big suffragist episode right before the
it was great,
right before the election, and I had a week to do it. And that's full on women in clothes from 1920, and you just get out and that's where you really reach in and find that knowledge of what you're doing, and you don't have time. But the bigger shows like the Lumina Ball or whatever, we usually had a decent amount of leeway. But like Maggie was saying, there's so much more to it. There's getting the sketches, getting the approval, just shopping the fabric and figuring out. You don't just go out and buy fabric. You go out and you have to get swatches, and you have to narrow that down. So there's a process to get all of the
fitting the actor.
Well, having the clothes made, getting the actors to the fittings, which sometimes is like herding squirrels,
pulling teeth.
Oh my gosh, so it's a very long process. The big royal wedding, luckily I had, I think we had a month or maybe even 2 months heads up. So I was able to do the Princess Cassie wedding gown in time, but that was all hand beaded. That stuff takes
that gown was spectacular. Do you both have favorites that you've designed?
That's hard. Of course I have favorites. I have Cassie's wedding gown. That was one of my favorites. But even a show like On Another World, my first Halloween episode on Another World was just so much fun and joy to do. And I worked, I got to play with Charles Keating and Victoria Wyndham and, and Judy Evans. And we had so much fun doing that Halloween episode. I will be honest with you. I don't like doing Halloween episodes anymore. I cringe. I'm like, no,
every year. No, not another Halloween show.
Oh no, they're so.
I know.
It's because of Halloween's become such a commercial industry now that it's like it's not fun anymore. So
Maggie, though, at World Turns, was that Halloween? I don't know if it was a Halloween show. It might have been a Valentine's show with everybody. Lucinda and Colleen and Eileen were all dressed in these fabulous. But I don't know if it was Halloween. It might have been
fabulous. What?
Lucinda might have been in like Dalmatian, or one of them was in a Dalmatian.
I was going to mention that particular show.
Was that about Valentine or Halloween? I don't remember.
I don't remember. It was a special show that we did. And speaking of characters that really can do just anything, Colleen was amazing. Of all my actresses, and you would say, Colleen, here, wear this today. She'd go, oh, okay. She'd put it on and look at it. And she was so adventurous because she would do anything. And that show, she played the wicked stepmother. So we made all those costumes, and the three girls, we did a Cinderella skit. What was that? It was a fairy tale.
Yeah,
we did.
It might have been the Lakeview Halloween. Somebody's asking. Oh no, no, 1920s theme. That's not the one.
Well, we did a 1920s show that we were very proud of, and that was fantastic. But it was more of a fairy tale theme, and we had all kinds of. I think we had Cruella, but again, yes, some of those we made, and they were amazing. One of my very favorites was Felicia Galant's wedding at a racetrack, which maybe you saw, Shawn, as a younger kid. And we created this whole black and white ascot device. And we made a lot of the things. And we
still had those clothes and those costumes in storage when I came on board. That black and white hat that she wore. Black and white hat,
which I made myself because I had done as one of the many things. So I created this hat. And I say we because Shawn and I don't work in a vacuum. Besides what we take in, we always have to have the strongest group of people working with us to be able to happen. And I was always so lucky to have an incredible crew. I worked with Charles Schumacher for years, and then I worked with Tracy Dorman and Philip Heckman who better to say, how do we do this? I always had a great crew and people who would say, okay, we're game, let's do that. Let's do some beating.
There is no way anybody could do this alone.
No,
well, they also put up with us when we were so stressed and probably not having the best day in the world. It's not quite as high pressure. Yeah, I mean, it still is to this day. Don't get me wrong, but there was a time where I know when I first started out, my own insecurities would get the better of me, and I could be probably not the most enjoyable person to be around. But I valued my crews, like Maggie was saying. Lynn, who's listening, hopefully still. Maggie and I both worked with this amazing woman, Liz Spagnola, who just was like, she was the mother to us all.
The best ironer in the business.
Oh my God! I have to tell this. I have to tell this Liz story real quick because she was so amazing. First of all, she wore these giant sunglasses. She's this tiny little Italian woman, and it used to be the habit, not habit, but it used to be the way we did the show. We would get all of the next day's clothes ready on a rack with all the jewelry and everything, and then Liz and I would go through each outfit, and she would write down all the different components of that outfit so that the wardrobe crew the next day, and everyone knew Felicia was wearing this top, this jacket, these shoes, this person. Anyway, so Liz was a woman of a certain age, and she would be at her iron writing down the information, and then I would watch her do this. She would start to fall asleep, and I would see the pen start to slide, and she would kind of nod off for a few minutes sitting there, and I would dutifully wait. I wouldn't interrupt her. I would wait for a few minutes, and then she would catch herself, and she would wake up, and she would look at me real seriously and say, "I'm waiting for you," like it was my fault. So she would kind of take a little nap. But then
but so stylish.
She was always so stylish. And then going to Guiding Light, Heidi, and Allison, one of the most amazing. I call her my co-designer now. She was my quote unquote assistant designer, but she was my daytime wife, and I couldn't have done it without her. I could turn to her, like Maggie said, and say, "What do I do here?" And I have to say, I'm going to be very specific. The renderings and the drawings that I sent you, the ones from Guiding Light, Allison is the artist for those sketches. I am not the artist.
Okay.
I'm the designer, and it is common for designers to turn to sketch artists and artists to do their beautiful renderings. Right. I don't have time to do it. I'm very slow. So Allison did those beautiful paintings and renderings for us.
I'm glad you said that, because I wouldn't have known that, but I think it's great for people to know the process, and for people who are looking to follow your footsteps.
It's very big here in LA, not as much in New York, because you have all these theater kids coming from Yale and whatnot, and they come with this pride of being able to paint these beautiful renderings. I did not have that training, so my renderings takes me forever, and they're okay. They're working renderings. But Allison did those, and then for the Another World renderings, my assistant designer, Rhonda Roper, did those sketches for us. So I want to give them proper credit for their beautiful artwork and talent. So there you go.
That's awesome. So Shawn, I asked Nicole, I said,
Nicole,
is there a favorite thing Shawn dressed you in? And she wrote back, she said everything. But he introduced me to AG jeans, which I still love today. And her question to you is, what designer jeans are you putting on the Soap Girls now? She needs a modern update.
Well, Nicole needs to get a pair of Page jeans. Page are the best jean on the market right now. And that's my go-to jean for men and women. But Page.
Oh, for men? P-A-G-E?
P-A-I-G-E.
Oh, interesting.
I'm wearing Page today, as a matter of fact.
I'm going to look that up. So going shopping, who were some of the fun ones to go with, and who were some who, you didn't have as much fun without throwing them on, I mean, I'm sure there were actors who loved to go, and just actors who, even women don't all love shopping.
Right.
No, God, no.
And it's a hard thing to do, to stand in front of a mirror having somebody throw clothes at you for however long.
Well, and clothes that aren't necessarily something you would wear,
right?
And separate yourself from the character and say, okay, I'm supposed to be wearing this as my character.
I was just going to say, for the least favorite for me, or the hardest for me, I won't name names, but I would say that it was always difficult with the young talent. If you had an actor who had been doing this for a long time, or came from theater, they knew that you were building a character. But if you had somebody who's really talented, but didn't really go through the training, but was really great on the show, it was really hard for them when they started, especially at a fitting at a store or the first fitting, separating the character from the person. Mm-hmm. So that was always the most, for me, the most difficult, especially with really younger talent, trying to sort of mold them into realizing, no, those shoes are great for you, but we want you to stand a certain way that maybe makes you more assertive, or that you don't make so much noise when you walk on set. the jean situation, you know what I stopped? I stopped buying jeans for any of my actors, and I would say, I want you to go and buy 3 pairs of jeans and bring them into the studio. They all have to be this color, this, and then they would bring their own, because it was impossible to fit people into jeans. You bring 25 pairs of jeans and they never work, right? Isn't that?
Yeah. I always ask the actor to go shopping or just to let me know what brand of jeans they wear, and then I start with that.
Yeah.
And often we'll introduce them to maybe better fitting jeans as we progress. But,
Right.
Alan, you mentioned taking them shopping. We didn't really do that a lot. We didn't often, occasionally, especially in New York, we had places set up like Saks Fifth Avenue had a special office for us and a special dressing room, and we could go and have the actors meet us there and we could shop. But it's very time consuming to kind of pull an actor along with you as you shop. We don't have time for that. I need to be able to go to stores, scan, pick, go, so it was a special new character. We would usually take them on their first shopping trip to Saks.
And then so later on, you would go out, get a slew of things, and they would come down to your dressing room area.
Correct.
And try everything on.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's funny you mentioned that, because yesterday I actually took an actor shopping for the first time in a very, very, very long time. I took, I'm not even, I don't even know I could say it. I'm not going to say it because I might get in trouble.
Don't say it. Yeah, I don't want you to get in trouble.
So yeah, I might get in trouble because Frank Valentini might say, "Don't, no spoilers." And I just have to give a shout out to Frank Valentini, my executive producer on this show, because he has made this process in my career even more enjoyable than ever. And I love working for him. He's one of the best, and he just lets me just play on General Hospital, and it's so much fun. Anyway, yeah, we only took them to places like Saks. We never really took them to Bloomingdale's, but the creation of their closet is a long ongoing process. It's constantly changing.
Never ending.
Never ending. We have to stay up to date, and we're constantly taking clothes out and bringing new stuff in, whatever's the new style for that season or whatever. So,
I mean, I was blown away watching your department's work at both As the World Turns and Guiding Light. And thankfully, Shawn dressed me a few times for the Emmys. I was going to ask, one of the fans had written, you said this a few times. So today you're prepping, let's say you work tomorrow, you're prepping the clothes for that show. When is the clothes actually picked out for tomorrow's show?
For me now, it really depends on timing. We shoot so many scenes a day now, more than ever, and I have a huge cast on this show. It's probably 3 times the size of Guiding Light, so we have just immense amounts of outfits to prepare. In the past, and I know Maggie, I think, worked this way as well. We would try to pull a whole quote unquote day on Bay City or Port Charles or wherever ahead of time, like the week before, to try to get it all ready for the next week. But the scripts were easier, the scenes were less complicated than they are now. So we would try to really get it set at least a week ahead. Now I'm often pulling the next day, the day before, because it's just nonstop. I mean, today we're shooting 75 scenes.
Wow.
And that's encompassing.
Oh my God.
And that's 3 different episodes, scenes from 3 different episodes that we will, we're pre-taping everything. So, and then tomorrow we're pre-taping scenes that I don't even have scripts for, but we have to utilize the set and a certain actor who's available. So now I'm pulling for clothes that I don't even really know what the script is going to be.
Yeah.
Right. So you're just kind of faking it.
Yeah. It's amazing because when we started, as it has evolved, when we started, we really had the leisure because the days would go on for a long time and we would pull for a long time. And as the business sort of shifted, that we started doing scenes here and there, it became more and more difficult. And without a person like Ellen Anton for me, who was
Ellen.
my entire career, Liz and Ellen Anton were my legs, my arms. They were my brain, and my co-designers were my right hand. Without that, it'd be impossible because the continuity got so involved,
Mm-hmm.
and we sometimes would pull one day, but then the night before, just like I said, they would say, "Okay, we're going to shoot some scenes way into the future," and you go, "We don't even have the clothes."
Yeah.
And so somebody would be running out to get the clothes. Somebody else would be doing the show. Ellen would be trying to scramble to figure out where the dry cleaning was so we could get that.
Yeah.
It was, and it's evolved.
Yeah, I mean, doing 75 scenes is, really, when you started, Maggie, it was still one episode per day.
Yeah, one episode a day.
Theater. We created theater back then. It was really, that's what it was. And then it became a motion picture but now it's beyond that because you're doing so many scenes. I mean, if you do a movie, you're going to do how many scenes. But then what you're doing is not,
people have to realize we don't have time to have a dress rehearsal. We don't have time to see the outfits that we are pulling and getting ready for each character. We don't have time to see them in these outfits beforehand. I go to their closet. They all have big closet space in our big warehouse studio wardrobe space. And I have to put these clothes together as outfits. I don't know if it's going to work or not. And you put it out there for them and you just keep your fingers crossed that they wear everything that they're supposed to, and they get to set on time and there aren't any changes, but they do come in and say, "Oh, this doesn't fit," or "I'm not feeling this today," or "I don't really like this blouse." So there's a lot of, changes here and there. And I want to just point out, and Maggie can agree, not every outfit we pull is great. There are days I could be watching the taping of the show because I have a monitor in my office. I could be watching and I'll look up and I'll just say, "Wow, I pulled that outfit. That's not a good outfit." Or I'll watch an air show and I'm like, "Oof, that blouse didn't work." So
yeah, you're working at a pace that it's impossible for perfection.
Yeah.
At every, it's sort of like in some of the actors who have been on, say like, I just have to let the day go because you can't focus on what I did today because I have to prepare for tomorrow.
Right.
And it's the same for you all. You have to, you can't think of what was just, all right, I'll try to not do that again tomorrow, but you have to plan for your next day. You can't dwell.
The problem is that some of those outfits they might have to wear with continuity for a long time.
Oh yeah.
I'm thinking, but you get the actor who comes in and says, "I had Chinese food last night, and you put me in this outfit because of the continuity." And look at me now; I don't fit in. And then how do you make grab the big purse or
or the boa
at some point? It's really touch and go, but also. I think one thing that I know that's how I work, and I'm sure Shawn does too, we take into consideration the other actors on set. So you're really playing with color and you're playing with background. So when you're pulling those clothes, and you're not only pulling clothes that fit this actor, but you're pulling it for the story, for the scenes that they're working in
for the set.
For the set, yeah.
For the set, because you don't want to pull a red dress if the walls are red.
What are the backgrounds?
So you're thinking of every little aspect, as Maggie was saying.
What are the backgrounds, and where are they going?
Do you have pictures of those sets, or do you just remember them always, or do you call set design if you forget?
All of the above.
Yeah, if it's a new set, you usually get to, but. Talk about it but sometimes they have to put something up in the last minute and
right.
The wallpaper and you've got the print and what do you do?
Yeah.
Right.
My staff is very good. The woman, the position who takes all of my clothes that I've pulled and starts getting it ready for the next day. She's really good about saying, hey, you've already got so and so in a blue shirt. Now this guy's in a blue shirt. So, or they'll say that this set is green. Hold on just a second.
It's absolutely right. You kind of.
Yeah.
Sorry about the phone.
That's okay. Yeah. I mean, there's so many factors that go into it, and Shawn is working with Maura on General Hospital. Maggie had Maura when she had three pregnancies, I think, during.
Three, count them, three. It was amazing. I mean, thank God for Maura because she's,
she looks good in anything.
Yeah, there at all. But a woman gets insecure at one point.
Oh,
that phone.
You're worse than I am. I thought I had turned mine off.
Well, he's at work.
He's at work. I have no excuse.
Me too.
Maura could, being pregnant, your body is changing. These actors are standing in front of the world with a body that they can't. They're like, okay, who am I today? And a lot of
it used to be taboo to see the actresses growing belly. I mean, we used to have to really hide.
You'd have the big bags.
With purses and bags and pillows, and they're always folding laundry.
Trees.
Whatever.
Yeah. Nowadays, we're not quite as specific about hiding it because it's a natural aspect of life. So we do the best we can, but we're not quite as specific about, we got to hide this. So,
well, World Turns did a great thing when Maggie had three, I think, at the same time. Kelly, Martha, I think it was Kelly, Martha, and Maura.
And
right?
Was
it Maura in the spa?
Somebody else was Hal and
I can't think. It might not have been.
It was a lot.
Yeah, it was all at once. The spa robes. The spa robes. They were all in robes.
I know this story. Yeah.
Yeah. They were all in robes, which made it really, a little easier.
Actually, Maura West told me this story.
It was crazy. All at once, everybody with the towels on their heads and fine.
It's something about it popped into my head.
It was Maura, Martha, and Kelly, as I thought. Lynn just confirmed it for me. Yeah. Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Lynn.
Something we have to pay attention to is with character development. Maggie worked with Maura West. I worked with Maura West. So she has a very specific character from As the World Turns. And then I get her. And same thing with Laura Wright, playing Cassie on Guideline, Carly here. We have to make sure that these characters, when I start doing them, don't look like their characters from other shows. So that's another check that we work through when working with characters and actors and actresses to make sure they're not identifiable from other. Because I'll be fitting Maura or Laura in something, and they'll say, this is a little too Cassie or whatever. So
I had that with Katie McLean. I worked with her on All My Children, and then As the World Turns. And our goal every day was to try to make her look not like the old,
Dixie.
Yeah, Dixie, right.
Dixie, right.
Every day. Yeah. That was our check mark.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It really is a fascinating process. Shawn, it must have been nice, though, arriving in Port Charles to, Laura and then Cynthia and then Emmy Rylan.
It helped very much. I mean, Laura was the first one who was here, and Laura actually was instrumental in getting me to work on the show. She brought my name up to Frank when they needed a designer. And they called me in New York and asked me to come out. And initially I said no, because I didn't want to move to LA. But Frank basically said, you know what, I'm going to let you sleep on it. I'll call you tomorrow. And I slept on it and realized, I should probably give it a try. So I came out here to do it. But it's been great to have, but even people like, having Maura West, even though I didn't work with her in New York, we all came from the same circle. We all knew the same people and had a very similar work ethic. So it's very comforting to have Maura or Roger Howarth or some of these people that have Roger. So, but Laura, just really welcomed me with open arms. So yeah. And that was 8 years ago. I can't believe I've been on the show.
Wow.
8 years. I know.
Well, if you got to New York, you'd be doing something else because there are no more soaps.
Yeah, I don't know what I would be doing.
Thing ever.
It was hard. I won't lie. It was hard after Guiding Light was canceled to find any kind of footing as a designer in New York City. It's a tough business, and you get pigeonholed. And coming from daytime, I would interview for certain jobs, and a lot of producers don't really have enough vision to sort of realize that a costume designer will design whatever is given to them, and you get pigeonholed. So it was a little challenging for a while in New York to kind of find my way out of daytime, that sort of image. But listen, I love daytime. I wouldn't. Doing soaps has been so rewarding in so many ways, more so than probably if I had tried to do episodics or sitcoms or film. Maggie can attest to this. We are given so much freedom on these shows, and I'm so thankful for it, because you can be so creative that way. I really only answer to my actors and actresses and my executive producer and myself. It's a very tight working unit, because we work so fast and have to do this so quickly, and that just helps just the creativity. I don't have to answer to a lot of additional vague voices or people out in the world. So,
do you miss the amount of work, Maggie?
I miss the people. We worked hard, and especially at the end, it was very sad because we were all seeing something that we had loved so much sort of slowly die, and it was very, very sad. But so the work got more and more difficult. We had less money. The problems were bigger. Trying to keep the integrity of what we were doing. One of the things that Shawn was saying, one of the things about working on soaps that I found was the family that we created as groups. And starting with our executive producers, I worked with some of these people from the beginning of my career, and they might have been directors, or they might have been, stage managers. And 25 years later, they were the executive producers. So we didn't even have to talk to one another. We understood how to make the machine go quickly on the same level. So Mikey Eilbaum, Chris Goutman, Casey Childs. These are directors who became producers who we started together. We started in the business together. So then you sort of worked in this nucleus of these people that knew how you work, and you had these actors who you became part of your family. It was a very special situation, and we all grew together and grew to be able to do these projects every day to the maximum degree. You just did it so fast, but you were able to produce these things that you were so proud of. Some days were diamonds and some days were not, but it sure was a rewarding way to be able to do what you love.
And long hours together. And all of these creative, egos, mine included, actors, whatever, all came crashing into each other. And it, like Maggie said, it just worked. And we became this really tight-knit family on all those shows. And still to this day here on my show now.
I knew that when the phone call came from like Felicia Bayer. I knew when she was executive producer for me, I knew exactly if I looked up at the monitor what she was going to call me about.
Yeah.
And you hang up.
I still do this, Maggie. I still do the same thing.
On the same wavelength.
Yeah.
It didn't even have to be discussed.
Yeah.
Huh.
That's
I'll see the control room call me, and I'll look up at the monitor, and I'll be like, "Oh, they're calling about that," and they are. And
they are.
we don't change people as much as we used to. We don't have time. There was a time where they would call from the control room and say,
yeah.
"You know, we don't really like this dress on Donna Love," and we would do a change. We would change them. In just those few minutes, you rush around and get a new outfit ready for them, and you get it out to set, and they change on set, and you keep moving.
Yeah.
There's no time for holding up the set. We don't do it as much as possible as we used to now. We just don't have the time. They'll just say to me, "You know what? We didn't love that dress. Let's not see it again." You know, so on Guiding Light. I mean, you remember, Alan. You know, we had an executive producer who was infamous for sitting in the booth and just micromanaging everything he saw. And we were constantly running to make changes throughout the day. But he had a very keen eye, and he was the executive producer, and it was his show. So if he wanted a different tie, we got him a different tie. So
that's amazing. I mean, the two of you have worked with so many EPs. And Maggie, you returned to All My Children when Prospect Park. What was it like returning to All My Kids?
Susan Gammy, one of my very favorite people and great designer.
Susan.
Yeah, and again, you know, we all kind of knew each other. We'd run into each other at stores, give ourselves a hug, and keep running to whatever we do. But that was it was difficult because we wanted it to work so badly and so much, and everyone really wanted it to happen, and it just couldn't get off the ground. So it was difficult. It was a difficult, like, I want to say 6 months. I don't remember. It kind of, Susan was designing and she called me in, and it was a pretty big group of us trying to get this going. But
and remember, they were up in Connecticut filming. They were in the city. And being in the city, if you need something, you can get out and get it, and you can resource anywhere up there.
Yeah.
You know, you had to kind of
to Connecticut, and shopping was a nightmare.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you had to get something to get on, you know, we really had to work ahead. We didn't building closets from scratch for all these characters. It was difficult.
Yeah, it's a shame.
Yeah,
it's a shame.
It was a shame. It didn't.
Paul, Shawn, a fan just said, "Paul Roush, cough, cough."
I'm the one designer that never worked with Paul Roush.
Oof, Paul.
Ever. It's unbelievable.
He kept me on my toes, let me tell you. But
he kept people running. He kept people running.
But you know what? We did some of the most amazing shows with him. He had a huge vision, so we went with it. We rolled with it.
He really did. Shawn, a fan, Arlene was asking, did you dress Maura for the Ava in Garden of Good and Evil cover shot?
Yes, I did.
They loved it.
Yes, it was the magazine cover. Oh, she looked. Oof, she was the bomb in that.
That Maura.
Well,
she looks good in anything.
Ava Jerome on this show is, you know, she's one of those characters that throughout the years you just love, like Felicia Gallant, or you know, I always go back to Another World when I had Cindy Harrison, who was played by Kim Rhodes, or Beth Ellers. They will just go on the journey with you and take these characters to different levels. And Ava Jerome, Maura West, plays this vampy, just this amazing character, and she just will go with the clothes.
Yeah.
And that cover was pretty amazing. So, and she's fearless. When they're fearless, I'm all for it. So
absolute talent. She's so talented, that Maura West.
Oh my God.
She could drive me a little crazy. Now, if Maura hears this, she could drive me a little crazy sometimes because she's so invested.
It's all in here.
Yeah.
She's all in here.
Yeah.
And you're trying to figure it out. So, and sometimes it's hard. Yeah, it's hard. But once you get there.
It's interesting because our roles, as a publicist, where I have to represent every cast member, you have to dress you have to, each of you and myself, you have to have a different personality with each person you deal with, because you're dealing with 60 different, but that's in life. Like if you were a doctor and dealing with 60 different patients, you are somebody different with, each person you meet. But
75% psychiatry. I'm not kidding. We're all
you're right.
and they are standing. They are so vulnerable in front of you, and you're trying to make them wear these things, and sometimes they just don't feel like it, or they have Chinese food. And
we are our worst. Just the three of us. If you go look in the mirror at yourself, I'll pick apart everything.
Oh, absolutely.
Everything.
So you understand it completely.
Unbelievable. And that is really a big part of every day of
but
the
you still have to be firm and continue to guide them to where you ultimately need them. So it's a balancing act.
Well, you especially have to build an enormous trust, because they are putting their bodies and their likeness in your very capable hands.
Mostly. There are days I'm not very capable.
We've all had days, and I remember Liz Hubbard coming and sitting down at my desk. And Liz, I loved, because she justified everything, and it made complete sense. Okay, you're not wearing, off white today. Okay, let's move on. Let's find something else. She always justified it,
I mean,
that show. Oh, one second, Shawn. But on that show, Liz, I would assume Catherine Hayes and Eileen felt who they knew what their characters would.
Oh,
right.
Oh, absolutely.
And had no issue saying it out loud.
No, but they were very. They wanted to keep up with the times. They were not stuck in an era, which is a wonderful thing. So and it's a difficult thing when actors move on in age, and some of them want to hang on to a look that just doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
And thankfully, these women were game, and they trusted basically me, and they had such great style and taste that I could bring them things, and they go, "Oh, I'll try that." But every once in a while, you get somebody said, "No, I don't wear that." Well, you didn't then, but now it's the right time. So
well, Maggie's actually talking kind of about sort of what I was going to bring up. I just wanted the viewers and fans to kind of get this as well. We are only able to bring clothes in that are in the stores at that time. It seems so easy to say, oh, just go pull a suit or go pull a dress or go do this. It may not be in the stores at that time. We don't, you're limited with the amount of time you have to go shop, the stores you have to shop in, whatever season or fashion is available at the time. So I used to have actors and executive producers say, oh, we want the Armani look or whatever. The Armani look at that time may not be appropriate to what we're doing, or it's dated or whatever, but I only have what's available to me in the stores at a given time. And I can say that specifically now because right now the stores are bleak. It is so challenging to try to
because
shop
of COVID.
Because of COVID, because even before COVID, retail was struggling. But also retail has gotten into this very sort of groove where you have basically one style that everyone seems to do because it sells. So you don't get a lot of variety. So to try, and also people in their everyday lives aren't wearing the types of clothes that they used to. Men aren't wearing suits and women aren't wearing high heels or whatever. But I still have characters that I need to portray, and whatever style is right now. prairie dresses for some
I was
reason
just gonna say, the
are
prairie
everywhere. I can't,
doesn't work well on TV. Period.
No, and
90% of the people. Period. And then
no, they're terrible.
Right?
But that's all I have. So, you know,
Terrible.
and I'll look online and see what fans are saying every once in a while. I try not to that much, but you know, I'll see them, you know, being critical of clothes, and I'm like, you don't understand. There's so many like little things that we have to work around, and it's contemporary clothing, and we all have closets, but it's more than just going and pulling clothes and putting it on people. So,
Well, I'm curious with what you were saying about retail, because retail, so many shops are closing up. Are you doing like the rest of Americans and shopping? Are you able to shop online?
Yeah. I mean, I would say probably 75% of what I'm using these days is coming from online, and it's brutal.
It's hard.
It's brutal. I can order, you know, 10 dresses, and I might use one might be usable because they come in and they're not the same color you think, or the fabrics are, it's plus the shipping, and then we have to process the returns.
You need a shipping department all of a sudden. I mean, your crew, the one crew member spends the entire time checking things in and shipping things out. I remember, and this was how I.
Were you doing that as well?
At the very end of As the World Turns, Ellen became I'm the shipping department now. I like to do because you had certain days that you had to return by, and this was just at the beginning. I can't even imagine now. And when the show out of Connecticut, the same thing. We had so much stuff, and it's just like anyone else at home. You how many shoes do you order?
Right, a couple to see if they.
Right.
Well, no, and then return them.
Send them all back to keep maybe one pair if one fits well. Well, then you have the entire cast.
I mean, listen, there was a time, and this is how Maggie and I used to work. We could go to Bloomingdale's or Macy's or Lord & Taylor, the big department stores, and some of the smaller boutiques. We could go to a special office called Studio Services, and we could go throughout the whole store and pull whatever we wanted, and they would write it up. It wasn't paid for at that point. They would write it up. We would have the clothes delivered to us at the studio. We would do our fittings. I mean, we're talking racks and racks of clothes, because you don't just try one dress. You try 5 dresses because you don't know what's going to work. And then we would pay for what we've kept and then return everything else. Now imagine all of that online nowadays with boxes and shipping and trying to keep track of it. So everything I'm pulling from the stores physically in person, I have to do online now.
Yeah.
So the volume, and I have to give a shout out to the one on my crew here, Billy Hoffman, who does that beautifully, but he just had to process and box up 2 racks of clothes yesterday to get returned.
Wow.
That's exhausting. And he's got to get the schedule, the breakdown plots ready for everybody. He's got a lot of other things to do, but so.
Wow, it's really different time.
It's evolved into a totally different world.
Yeah, it's evolved. It's evolved so differently. I could talk to you for hours.
I know.
You two are fabulous.
You told me it was going to be fun, Alan, and it is. I've had a great.
Okay, good. Good. I'm glad, Maggie, because I know you don't normally do this, and I appreciate you both doing this with me. It's so good to see both of your faces.
Oh,
it's been a long time in person.
It's so good to see you, Alan, and so good to see you, Maggie. I miss you both so much.
Me too. Hopefully, one of these days.
In real life.
Real life.
Virtual.
Yeah. You stay well. Have a great afternoon, and thank you so much.
And thank you, everyone who tuned in to watch us.
Really everybody's here. They want you to dress Ava in more black leather outfits. She rocks them.
I'll make a note of that. Happily,
Bye,
I will happily do that. Bye, everyone.
Have fun with your daughter.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed today's show. Fascinating what they do. Really. Thank you, Maggie. Thank you, Shawn. I want to remind everybody this Saturday, don't forget that the Locker Room is partnering with SoapCon Live to bring your favorite daytime stars to your living room with free live panels. Please check out soapconlive.com to find the complete schedule for the Doctors, As the World Turns, One Life to Live, and General Hospital panels. And book a meet and greet with your favorite daytime star. You can see the schedule and book it right online. Thanks for tuning in today. And don't forget, if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, you can do so right below. Turn on the notifications so you're reminded about upcoming shows. Have a great afternoon, everybody. Bye.